When we think of the most dangerous predators on Earth, our minds usually drift to the monsters of our nightmares. We picture the raw, unbridled power of an African lion, the venomous strike of a king cobra, or the gaping jaws of a great white shark. It is human nature to fear what is big, fast, and armed with sharp teeth.
We document shark attacks with dramatic headlines and fear stepping into the deep ocean. We meticulously avoid tall grass to steer clear of venomous snakes. Yet combined, all the sharks, wolves, lions, and crocodiles on Earth kill fewer than 10,000 people a year. They are deadly, yes, but they are far from being the true masters of human destruction.
To find the creature responsible for more human deaths than any other, you have to look much, much closer. You must ignore the roar and listen for a high-pitched whine. This assassin doesn't weigh hundreds of pounds. It weighs a fraction of a gram. It doesn't hunt with brute strength, but with surgical precision.
The most dangerous animal on Earth is the mosquito. It is a creature so small and fragile that you can crush it with a single clap of your hands. Yet it wields the power to topple empires, halt armies, and alter the very course of human history. Every single year, mosquito-borne diseases are responsible for the deaths of over 700,000 to 1 million people. To put that into perspective, human beings, with all our wars and violence, are the only creatures that even come close to killing that many of our own kind.
But the annual death toll is just a snapshot. Some historians and scientists estimate that over the last 200,000 years, mosquitoes have been responsible for the deaths of nearly half of all humans who have ever lived. Billions of lives quietly extinguished by a tiny flying insect. To understand how this is possible, we have to look at the mosquito not just as a bug, but as a highly evolved piece of biological machinery. There are over 3,000 species of mosquitoes, but only a few hundred feed on human blood. And among those, it is strictly the females that bite.
The female mosquito requires the rich proteins and iron found in our blood to develop her eggs. Without our blood, her lineage dies. So nature has equipped her with one of the most sophisticated sensory and surgical suites on the planet. Her hunt begins from a distance. Up to 150 feet away, the mosquito detects the invisible plumes of carbon dioxide that we exhale with every breath. To her, our breath is a glowing beacon in the dark, leading her straight to her target.
As she gets closer, her sensors pick up our body heat and the specific chemical cocktail of our sweat. Lactic acid, uric acid, and ammonia are like an irresistible perfume. This is why some people truly are mosquito magnets. Their unique chemical signature is simply more appetizing.
When she finally lands, her touch is incredibly light. Her legs are equipped with delicate receptors that taste the surface of your skin, looking for the absolute perfect spot where a capillary lies just beneath the surface. What happens next is not a simple prick with a needle. Her proboscis actually unsheathes to reveal 6 terrifyingly complex microscopic tools. 2 of these tools have tiny teeth that literally saw through your skin, pulling the flesh apart to clear a path.
While she saws, another tube pumps in her saliva. This saliva contains a powerful local anesthetic, so you don't feel the bite, and an anticoagulant, which stops your blood from clotting. She essentially numbs you and turns your blood into a free-flowing smoothie.
But the bite itself and the itchy bump left behind by your immune system's reaction to her saliva isn't what kills you. The mosquito is merely the delivery vehicle. The true killers are the microscopic hitchhikers she carries inside her gut and salivary glands.
The most notorious of these hitchhikers is Plasmodium, a single-celled parasite that causes malaria. When an infected mosquito bites, she injects these parasites directly into your bloodstream. They immediately travel to your liver, where they quietly multiply by the tens of thousands.
Once they burst out of the liver, they invade your red blood cells, feeding and multiplying until the cells explode. This synchronized destruction of red blood cells causes the devastating cycles of violent chills, soaring fevers, and catastrophic organ failure that characterize malaria. Malaria primarily targets the most vulnerable. A staggering majority of its victims are children under the age of 5 in sub-Saharan Africa. It is a relentless plague that shatters families and cripples entire economies by overburdening healthcare systems and preventing people from working.
But malaria is far from the only weapon in the mosquito's arsenal. Consider dengue fever, transmitted primarily by the Aedes aegypti mosquito. Dengue is often called breakbone fever because it causes severe joint and muscle pain that feels like your bones are literally cracking.
Then there is yellow fever, a disease that causes the liver to fail, turning the victim's skin and eyes a terrifying shade of yellow. Historically, outbreaks of yellow fever in port cities would cause mass panic, forcing entire populations to flee inland. More recently, the world watched in horror as the Zika virus spread across the globe. While often mild in adults, Zika attacked the nervous systems of unborn babies, causing severe birth defects. It was a terrifying reminder that mosquito-borne diseases are constantly evolving. What makes the mosquito such an unstoppable force is its incredible ability to breed. A female mosquito doesn't need a swamp or a lake. She can lay hundreds of eggs in a single bottle cap filled with rainwater, a discarded tire, or a neglected flower pot. These eggs can survive completely dry conditions for months, waiting patiently. The moment water touches them, they hatch into wriggling larvae. Within just a week or two, depending on the temperature, they transform through a pupal stage into fully grown, bloodthirsty adults. They emerge from the water's surface, dry their wings, and instantly take to the air, ready to begin the cycle all over again. This rapid reproduction means that a single pair of mosquitoes can result in billions of descendants in a matter of months. This relentless swarming has altered human history over and over. Ancient Rome was famously protected and cursed by the Pontine marshes. The malaria-carrying mosquitoes in those swamps wiped out invading armies, but also constantly sickened the citizens of Rome itself. During the colonization of the Americas, European forces were decimated by yellow fever and malaria. Whole expeditions were abandoned and military campaigns failed simply because soldiers were dropping dead from mosquito bites before they could even draw their swords. Perhaps the most famous modern example is the construction of the Panama Canal. The French attempt failed spectacularly, losing over 20,000 workers to mosquito-borne diseases. It wasn't until the Americans waged a massive, organized war on the mosquito that the canal could finally be built. It is a common misconception that mosquitoes are only a threat in steamy, tropical jungles. In reality, they are master survivalists that have conquered virtually every environment on Earth. They are found on every continent except Antarctica. In the high Arctic, when the top layer of permafrost melts in the brief summer, it creates millions of shallow pools. This triggers a massive, explosive hatching. Arctic mosquitoes form swarms so dense and aggressive, they can literally bleed a caribou to death. Meanwhile, species like the Aedes aegypti have evolved to live alongside us in concrete jungles. They don't want swamps, they want our cities. They thrive in our drainage ditches, our trash cans, and the dark corners of our urban environments. And as global temperatures rise, the mosquito's territory is rapidly expanding.
Areas of North America and Europe that were once too cold for tropical mosquitoes are now becoming perfectly welcoming habitats, bringing diseases like dengue to entirely new populations. So, how do we fight back against the deadliest animal on Earth? For decades, our greatest weapon was incredibly simple: the insecticide-treated bed net. By placing a physical barrier between the sleeping human and the night-hunting mosquito, millions of lives have been saved. In the mid-20th century, humanity escalated to total chemical warfare, blanketing swamps and cities with DDT. It was highly effective at first, nearly eradicating malaria in parts of the world. But the environmental cost was devastating, poisoning wildlife and ecosystems. Furthermore, the mosquito did what it always does. It adapted. Through rapid evolution, many mosquito populations simply developed genetic resistance to our best chemical sprays. We threw our most toxic weapons at them, and they learned to shrug them off. Today, we are moving away from brute force and towards biological sabotage. One method is the sterile insect technique. Scientists release millions of genetically modified sterile male mosquitoes. They mate with the wild females, but the eggs never hatch, causing the population to crash. Even more advanced is the use of CRISPR gene editing. Researchers are experimenting with altering mosquito DNA so they physically cannot carry the malaria parasite, or creating gene drives that ensure only male mosquitoes are born, essentially forcing a localized extinction. This brings us to a profound ethical dilemma. For the first time in human history, we might possess the technology to deliberately wipe an entire species off the face of the Earth. But should we? What happens to the ecosystem if the mosquito disappears? Ecologists argue over the answer. Some believe fish, birds, and bats rely on mosquito larvae and adults for food, and their removal could cause a ripple effect. Others argue that other insects would simply fill the void, and the ecological cost is worth saving 1 million human lives. As we debate the ethics, the mosquito continues to breed, bite, and adapt. The war against the most dangerous animal on Earth is far from over. It is a silent, endless battle, fought not with guns and tanks, but with microscopes, genetics, and the persistent hope for a healthier world.